Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
As always, we love taking a look at all the stuff that you guys are sending us and really finding those interesting insights that you might miss on a first read. Those things where you sort of step back and go, huh,
Yeah, I never thought about it that way.
I never thought about it that way before.
Exactly.
So for today's deep dive, the material we've got really centers around this idea of problems
Mhm.
and specifically how problems, and talking like challenges, obstacles,
Yeah.
the things we usually try to avoid can actually be amazing opportunities in disguise.
Yeah, particularly when you start thinking about, the financial side of things.
The financial side of things.
Mm.
So our mission today is to really help you guys flip that script in your head.
Yeah.
So you start seeing these problems, these challenges, not as like roadblocks, but as potential starting points
Mm-hmm.
for something new, exciting, and maybe even profitable.
Right.
And we're going to try and do this in a, quick and impactful way.
Absolutely.
So jumping right in. The material starts off with this really interesting point about mindset and how the way we approach a problem right from the get-go is so crucial.
Right. Like it sets the stage for everything.
It sets the stage.
Yeah.
And to illustrate this, it uses this example of the 12 spies.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
Yeah, 10 of them looked at the situation, that the challenges ahead, the giants, the unknown, and just saw obstacles, right?
Yeah. The report back was basically doom and gloom.
Total doom and gloom.
It was all about what they couldn't do.
Exactly. And it really reminded me of that whole glass half empty kind of perspective.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That classic negativity bias.
The source even calls it,
Um,
the wrong attitude towards the problem.
toward the problem.
Mhm.
Yeah, they were so focused on the immediate difficulties that they completely missed any potential for overcoming them.
They couldn't see past the obstacles.
But then you have Caleb and
Yeah, it's the
Joshua,
other two.
right? They saw those same giants, the same hurdles, but their takeaway was totally different. They were optimistic. Yeah, they believed they could find a way through.
I believe they could find a way.
That glass half full perspective.
Right. That's a much better way to put it. Yeah, the glass half full.
Right. Their attitude was one of possibility,
Possibility.
And this ties directly into what the material is really getting at. That our perspective really shapes whether we even see the opportunities that are often hidden within problems.
Right.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin almost.
It's like we're wearing those, those glasses that just block out all the good stuff.
Yeah, you got to take those off and really look at the situation with fresh eyes.
And the source actually makes a pretty bold statement here. It suggests that the people who actively seek out problems to solve, who don't shy away from those challenges, are often the ones who achieve the most success. It even goes as far as to say that your financial situation isn't really dictated by like the overall economy, but by the specific problems you choose to tackle.
That's interesting.
It's a pretty powerful thought, right?
Yeah, it is. When you think about it, money is often just a result of solving a problem for someone, right? Like you identify a problem, you come up with an effective solution, and a lot of times that solution has economic value.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To solve a real problem for people,
Right.
you're often providing something of value that they're willing to pay for.
So to really bring this home, the material gives us a bunch of awesome real-world examples.
Yeah, let's dive into those.
And the first one I want to talk about is Bata shoes.
Oh, Bata shoes.
Yeah.
This is a classic.
This is like a classic example.
Really illustrates the point.
It really brings this whole principle to life.
Yeah.
So you have this situation where someone goes to Africa
Right.
and they see that people aren't wearing shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And their immediate conclusion is, okay, no shoes, no market.
Yeah, it seems logical at first glance, right?
Yeah, it's like case closed, end of story, we're moving on.
Yeah, surface level thinking,
Totally missed opportunity.
huge missed opportunity.
So Bata comes along and they send in this educational team
Mm-hmm.
and they see the lack of shoes not as a sign that there's no market, but as a chance to actually create one.
Yeah, by educating people about the benefits of footwear.
Right, they weren't just trying to push a product on people. They recognized a real need and they wanted to meet it.
Absolutely.
And what happened?
Well, they set up factories.
They set up factories.
They provided jobs, and they became hugely successful.
They became hugely successful.
Yeah, providing affordable shoes all across the continent.
Yeah. So that initial problem, the lack of shoes, it became the very foundation of their success.
Right. They turned that perceived obstacle into a major opportunity.
They really did. And the material also highlights this other great example, flying doctors in Nigeria.
Oh, yeah.
This one's particularly interesting
It really gets you thinking.
because it shows what can happen when a serious problem just isn't addressed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it was the lack of reliable emergency medical transport in West Africa.
Yeah, a critical issue.
And for Dr. Ola Orikunrin, the founder of Flying Doctors Nigeria, this had devastating personal consequences. You know, her sister tragically passed away because she couldn't get the urgent care she needed.
It's a heartbreaking story.
It's heartbreaking, but incredibly inspiring how she took that loss and turned it into something so positive.
Right. She channeled that grief into action.
Exactly. Instead of accepting the situation, she identified this huge gap and she decided to fill it.
That's powerful.
And this is a perfect example of that proactive problem-solving mindset that we were talking about. You know, she didn't shy away from the challenge. She really dove in headfirst to understand the complexities. And then she launched West Africa's very first air ambulance service.
Amazing.
And now Flying Doctors Nigeria is saving lives.
Yeah. And it's made Dr. Ola a real entrepreneur. Her venture is a direct result of her recognizing a significant need and taking the initiative to address it.
It really is. And I think what strikes me most about these examples is the element of initiative. These individuals and companies, they didn't wait for someone else to step in. They took it upon themselves to find a solution.
Right. They took ownership of the problem.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
They didn't wait for permission or for someone to tell them what to do.
They saw a need and they took action.
Now, the material also gets into some broader economic stuff. You know, it points out how some of the wealthiest people in Britain actually saw their fortunes grow significantly after a major recession.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, right? You'd think everyone would be hurting equally during a recession.
Yeah, that's the common assumption.
But the source suggests that while many people definitely did face hardship, certain individuals and businesses not only survived, but thrived.
They found a way to come out on top.
So the question the source asks is, how could some people actually get richer during a recession?
It's a good question.
Right.
Because it challenges our assumptions.
And the implication is that these tough economic times, they often create new problems or make existing ones worse. And the people who can offer solutions are in a really good position to do well.
Makes sense. Like they're able to capitalize on those new challenges.
Right.
And maybe they're finding new efficiencies or addressing urgent needs that emerge in this new economic landscape. It's about adapting and innovating.
And the material also touches on the rise of these e-commerce giants like Amazon and Alibaba.
Yes, the titans of online shopping.
Right. And it frames their success around solving some fundamental problems like, you know, geographical limitations in shopping and inefficiencies of those traditional brick and mortar stores.
Right. The internet basically created this whole new set of problems and opportunities. The limitations of physical stores, the time and effort it took to shop, the desire for more choice and better prices, all of those became problems that these e-commerce platforms could address.
They stepped right in and said, hey, we can solve that. And by providing those solutions on this massive scale, they became global powerhouses.
It really shows how identifying and solving big problems for a lot of people can lead to huge financial success.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that it's not always about coming up with something completely brand new.
Right.
The source even highlights how many successful businesses, like those that improved the light bulb or made cars more affordable through mass production, they weren't really inventing something totally new. They were taking existing solutions and making them better, more accessible or more efficient.
They were optimizing.
They were optimizing.
Yeah, taking something that worked and making it work even better for more people.
Right. And a great example of this is Steve Jobs and Apple. You know, they didn't invent the personal computer or the MP3 player.
Right, but they revolutionized those technologies.
By focusing on the user experience, designed seamless integration. They really honed in on the problems of usability and accessibility and made those things so much better.
They made technology more human-centered.
So bringing it all back to you, our listeners, what does this all mean? I think the main takeaway is about really developing that problem-solving mindset.
Absolutely. It's about shifting your perspective and seeing challenges as opportunities.
It's about looking at challenges not as things to just avoid or complain about, but as potential pathways to create value and opportunity.
Yeah. Think like those founders we talked about, Flying Doctors,
Yeah.
the people behind Amazon, Apple.
Look around you, identify the frustrations, the inefficiencies, the things that aren't working as well as they could, and then ask yourself,
What can be done here? How can I make this better?
How can I make this better? And the source actually points out that sometimes our own personal frustrations can be amazing starting points for finding problems worth solving.
Yeah, that's true.
Like the founders of Uber, they came up with the idea because they were struggling to get a reliable taxi.
Right, they turned their own frustration into $1 billion business. It's a
Yeah.
great example of how personal problems can spark innovation.
So it all comes down to this question: what are the problems that really resonate with you? What are the challenges you see in your daily life, your community, your work?
Those are often the areas where you have the most insight, the greatest potential to make a difference.
And the source wraps up with some really inspiring stories of people who tackled these huge societal problems, things like injustice, lack of education, access to basic necessities, and they dedicated their lives to finding solutions.
It's amazing what people can accomplish when they're driven by a purpose. And these examples really show that the bigger the problem, the bigger the potential impact, both in terms of making the world a better place and often achieving significant financial success.
They tackled those fundamental challenges and created lasting legacies.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the material we've explored today really emphasizes that powerful connection between problems and opportunities.
Yeah.
Whether it's a lack of something basic, a need for a better service, or a major societal issue, those problems often contain the seeds of innovation and progress.
They're the fuel for change
Yeah.
and growth.
And the people who cultivate that proactive, solution-oriented mindset are the ones who are most likely to make a real difference.
They're the ones who drive progress.
So now that you've taken this deep dive with us, I want you to think about a problem that you encounter or observe, big or small. Where might there be a hidden opportunity within that challenge?
Yeah, think about it.
Remember those stories we talked about, from shoes to air ambulances to the evolution of technology? What existing challenge in your world could be the next unexpected path to innovation and impact?
It's out there, just waiting to be discovered.
Waiting to be discovered, so keep those minds engaged and those problem-solving gears turning.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.
We'll see you in the next one.